Hi, everybody. I'm Diane Brady. I'm here with Mark Penn, former senior advisor to the Clintons, chairman and CEO of Stagwell, and also chairman of the Harris Poll. Mark, good to see you.
Thank you. Good to see you.
Let's start with the results of this latest poll, because I think it's very telling given how much the economy is becoming an issue in the impending election.
Well, most people in America are unhappy with the economy. They don't see Bidenomics as working. They're really concerned about inflation. They think that almost 50% of the people think that they're getting worse. I think that when it comes to how am I doing, right, or how am I doing in terms of this economy, the answer is pretty clear. So I think that the administration has a lot of work to do if they're going to convince people that the economy is moving in the right direction, which I frankly did working with President Clinton. In 95, 96, we turned around attitudes towards the economy. But in this case, people really feel stretched by inflation. They feel their wages and economic position is being diminished. And I think that it's going to take a lot of work to turn that around. And without that, the economy is the number one issue. And I remain mystified about how little of the political debate actually revolves around doing something for the economy.
I mean, I'm curious if that's going to change. At this stage in the election cycle, is the economy typically paramount?
Well, yes. Normally, I would expect some good 4 to 6 point plans from virtually every candidate. I'd expect a lot of pundits putting out things, how to return to growth. I don't see anybody writing about it. I don't see anyone saying how we've got to, have, say, a balanced budget plan. Then we've got to deal with energy prices, food prices, competitiveness in the economy, trade. We have to have investments in certain areas. I don't see anyone with what I would call an economic plan. Trump doesn't have one. Biden's not putting out anything beyond whatever it is he's done. I think Tim Scott's the only one who recently put out a plan, but it didn't get that much visibility. Pundits would rather talk about the social and cultural issues and fate of democracy and parents' rights than they would really talk about the issue that's on most people's minds.
Well, I guess what's interesting right now is you have both sides talking about the weaponization of the justice system, with all the indictments against Trump. Now we're seeing some fresh charges against Hunter Biden, impeachment inquiry. Do you think that's the biggest distraction here that's keeping our eye off, really, the economic issues?
Well, I just think there's a big difference between what the bases and the Beltway are talking about and what the voters are feeling. The voters are feeling the economy's bad, crime maybe is increasing, immigration is out of control, and no one's really addressing a lot of those core issues. I think instead you are seeing kind of a can we keep Trump off the ballot? Can we put Trump in jail? Isn't that a good thing? What about Hunter Biden? Is Joe Biden corrupt? So much of the space is really taken up by those issues that we're not, we're a long way from the Kennedy-Nixon debates about the future of the country. And in fact, our general political dialogue has really kind of, gone down the tubes here.
Let's focus on the debates that we have seen and that are, we'll now see round two, which is the GOP debates. What did you hear there that surprised you? Obviously not a lot on the economy. You're right about that.
Well, look, I think that everyone knows that unless the non-Trump candidates consolidate, Trump is going to win. So are they all going to just stick on and let Trump win, or are they going to start dropping out and kind of sift themselves out? Right now, it looks like they're going to hold on and let Trump win. I don't know what it is going to take to get one or more out. Ron DeSantis's campaign really misfired. I think that there is, in fact, a lack of recognition that there are a lot of moderate Republican voters. I won't call them moderate. I'll call them there's very conservative, somewhat conservative, and the rest. There are a lot of somewhat conservatives, right, who don't want Trump, who wanted an alternative candidate, and both Vivek and Ron DeSantis tried to turn themselves into Trump. That was a mistake. Trump's already in the race.
Yeah.
That's why Nikki Haley came up somewhat, and Tim Scott has an opportunity, but he just really wasn't able to ring bells, I think, in that last debate. And in fact, Nikki Haley now is the one candidate that soundly beats Biden, right, by almost double digits in some polls.
Where did Ron DeSantis misfire? Because he was using a lot of the similar rhetoric that typically would fire up the base, I guess you'd say, but it seemed to fall flat. Why is that?
Well, because people who wanted Trump can vote for Trump. And really, when you look at what's happened, not since Goldwater have the Republicans really nominated the very conservative. Even George Bush became a compassionate conservatism. They had Romney, they had McCain. 23 states allow independent or other voters to vote in the Republican primary. I think they fundamentally misjudge. In Iowa, yeah, the most conservative candidate wins Iowa, but whoever wins Iowa never wins the Republican nomination, almost never. It's New Hampshire that really is a key determinant of who's going to get the nomination.
So if you were advising both parties, let's start with the Republicans. I don't know if there's popular will to continue to have Trump in that lead seat. He's got such a strong lead at this point. People are almost talking about it as a fait accompli. What would you be advising the other GOP candidates to do? Focus on the economy?
Well, I'd advise them to focus on the economy, focus on the suburban voter, right? Over 50% of the Republican Party is suburban. There are almost no urbanites in the party, and the rural vote is pretty much in Trump's hands. So I'd look at what are the concerns, the kinds of things that I think Youngkin kind of more pulled off. And obviously, they've got to moderate some of their abortion stand. Focus on the really middle class life, right? How do you get back to houses you can afford, food you can afford, gasoline you can afford? How do you really talk about the middle class squeeze, and how are you gonna do something about it? The taxes you can't pay, right? And that's really what's on the number one on the minds of these voters, and particularly these Republican voters. And I don't think that any of the candidates have really successfully addressed it. And then I would suggest they go in a room and draw lots, okay? Because if they don't hang together, they are all going to hang separately.
It's interesting you mentioned Youngkin because Steve Forbes, one of the things he's looking at is the potential for a Youngkin-Haley ticket. Do you think that's possible?
I think it would be a great ticket, but it's not possible. He didn't run.
It's early days yet, potentially.
Well, I'm not sure you can get on the well, there's maybe a little bit of time left to get on the primary ballots, right? If you generally, I think somewhere by mid-October they're closed. I don't know that another Republican, candidate into the mix here could really sweep it, particularly somebody who's not as well known across the country. I really think they've got to kind of consolidate their opposition. It'd be interesting if he got in. I do think he'd have a chance, and I do think Haley at this point, frankly, is the presidential candidate. Would do incredibly well. I think Tim Scott would do well. I think DeSantis is I think Vivek probably a little bit more like one of these temporary blips, if I had to really guess. And I think DeSantis had a lot of promise, but it's really hard for him to right the ship.
A lot of the discussion around President Biden right now is not so much the economic situation, which is certainly one factor, but it's his fitness for office. I'm curious in terms of whether it's polling or just your own, experience. What are the options there?
Well, I think that 70% of the voters, including in our poll, 42% of Democrats, question whether or not he is fit to continue in office. Those are serious numbers. So he's going to have to show, as President Reagan did at the time, or I suppose FDR did at certain other times, that in fact that's not the case, that he can do it. He can be a good and successful president. I think if Trump is the nominee, I think Democrats don't care. I think they would
Hmm.
vote for anybody other than Trump. And even if they thought there were questions about who would be president, they will stick together. If interestingly, if Biden drops out, maybe actually there'll be a push against Trump on the Republican side, or vice versa. If Trump were start to have problems, maybe people would pull back from Biden. Biden seems to be running. He's got the support. He's got the party apparatus. He's consolidated Democrats. There's a lot of doubt being sown. The David Ignatius column came in, but he seems to be that he's going to weather through this. And as long as he weathers through it, I don't think that anybody is going to enter into this contest.
Let me get this back to what you're advising companies right now, because it still remains a very polarized environment. Now, of course, you're talking about economic headwinds. Do they have to tread as carefully as they did perhaps even several months ago with regard to speaking out on these issues, or what's the climate like for them?
But I think companies have to get back to their business, promoting their products, number one. Voters don't want them doing kind of virtue signaling or going out of their character and getting involved in the middle of the issues of the campaign. Activists want them to do that, but not the broad scale voters. And I think that uh, voters do want social responsibility, but it's not really defined as what ESG defines social responsibility. If you can get kids reading by third grade, if you could come up with things that, if you can connect people, better through travel, if you could help educate people or give people more opportunity, there are lots of things that everybody can agree on that are socially desirable, that more companies should be getting back to that kind of social responsibility, not letting them get sucked into the vortex of politics. Because this vortex of politics, anything you get involved in here, all right, almost any issue that you can think of, even how you think the economy is going, is politicized, with 40% saying one thing and 40% saying the other thing. It's interesting, the other day, the only issue that I found so far that isn't politicized is AI, which people from all
Fear.
parties said the same thing. Yes, fear that it would cost jobs, blow up the world, but even about its promise. But there was no partisanship in the answers. Why? Because the party leaders haven't signaled to them which side they're supposed to be on,
That's
right? And
interesting.
the minute that happens, the people who are on either side will immediately jump to that side, because for 80% of the country, partisanship seems to overcome virtually any fact. But right now, nobody knows which side they're supposed to be on AI.
Now, I know we've talked a lot about the 90 plus indictments against former President Trump. How serious are these issues that are swirling around Biden? Now we have Hunter Biden suing the IRS. What do you make of that? I mean, just I'd be remiss not to ask, given just the amount of headlines it's generating at the moment.
Look, I didn't think Hunter Biden suing the IRS, when he's someone who clearly didn't pay a lot of taxes, was the smartest move in the world. I suppose that they decided that they didn't want to just be on defense; they wanted to have some offense. I didn't think it was a terribly good offensive move. Look, I think overall the Republicans have uncovered some serious questions here. They say there's $20 million, that it's been gone to 9 Bidens. It's unclear who got money for what and what was
Hmm.
done for that. And I think that there are two key areas of discovery here remaining, which are the 5,000 emails in the National Archives and the banking records of everybody. And I think that the Republicans won't stop until they get those or somebody destroys them. And when they get them, there will either be something there or that'll be the end of it.
So, Mark, you're on the front lines both with Harris Poll and Stagwell. I guess you could say it's the economy, stupid, that line's coming to mind. But is there anything else on your radar that you would put on ours, just as we're going into the following weeks of, really, in some ways, the heart of the campaign?
Well, I do think you have to look here at, is the First Amendment something that people are going to support and be concerned about, and how does that play itself out. I think you have to really look at the immigration issue. It's exploded in unexpected ways. It was before now an issue that only Republicans really cared about, but now that the influx of migrants has touched the big cities, that looks like it's exploding as a national issue that the Biden administration is going to have to take measures on, and you're going to have to generally look: is the presidency responding to the situation? When I went in with President Clinton, and we had numbers like this. We had a balanced budget program. We compromised on a number of issues. We passed legislation. We got things moving. Right now, the White House is looking at 40% approval ratings, 60% saying the economy is in bad shape. They're looking at a strike in the auto industry on top of this all. And they've got a summer that they did not use that productively, that he spent most of the time on vacation and did 9/11 from Alaska. And on top of it, gave $6 billion to the Iranians today. So I'm kind of a little puzzled by the overall strategy, but there's plenty of time to get going here. But I would expect them to really get going, and maybe play a key role in settling the strike, and maybe kind of get on both immigration and inflation as the two core issues that are weighing their numbers down.
Great. Mark, as always, I look forward to continuing the conversation. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.